I watched every single movie that was released last year, and I have them all ranked, starting with the worst movie of last year. Yeah, completely derivative of most everything you've ever watched in your life. Snyder has no idea how to conceptualize a good story anymore, it seems like. And people are always like, well, you know, at least the visuals are good. I like his visuals. He could really make a shot. He really knows how to compose a shot. And honestly, in this movie, the visuals for me are like muted. They're ineffective. They're not punchy. He has several slow motion scenes of, that's a shtick, I got it. Several slow motion scenes of people farming. Then there's like an action sequence. And then it goes back to slow motion sequences of farming. Just like there's no sense of pacing. There's no sense of rhythm. There's no sense of style either because it just feels empty. There's nothing stylish happening. It's just like empty tones. Zack Snyder, it seems like he needs to honestly like take it easy with the coke. Harold and the Purple Crayon. Dude, what the fuck happened here? I was mystified watching this movie. I couldn't believe what I was watching. So I guess at a certain point it's cool. Like I was actually experiencing something that was completely unique. Harold and the Purple Crayon? Zachary Levi in a blue jumpsuit, acting like a 5-year-old? Lil Rel as a moose turned human? This movie looks horrible. It's terribly acted. Has serviceable crayon effects and is by far the most bewildering watch of the year. So, I mean, if you want to see something that will blow your mind, don't watch it. This is my final half-star rating of the 2024 films that I watched last year. I don't really reach half-star very often, you know? Like, I like movies. I rate them decently higher, I think, than most people. Generally, I think that if a movie was made, it's above a quality threshold that brings it above, like, at least a 2.5-star rating. But some movies, man, they give you this feeling of they're taking more than they're giving to you. And that's a very rare experience for me, but sometimes it happens. And it happened for me when I watched Self-Reliance. Look, man, I like Jake Johnson. I think he's a funny guy. There's nothing funny in this movie, though. You can tell it's like actors in real time kind of just like figuring out what the scene is about. Like Anna Kendrick, if you watch her in this movie, she's just like, what am I? Where am I? Who am I? What am I? Ha! Yeah! It's just a nonsense movie, honestly. A lot of riffing, a lot of trying to find it. But the struggle with those types of movies is that sometimes you don't find it and then you have to keep it in the movie because you never got it. And that's what this movie really feels like for me. It was rough. Maybe I'm being too hard on it, but it just drained me as I watched it. Okay, now we're into the 1-star ratings. So a step up, half step. And to kick this one off, we have Lift. Bro, I don't know what I was thinking when I watched this movie. Straight to Netflix, standard schlock. Just a prime example of what's wrong with big budget movie faking and movie faking. Well, actually, that sounds right. Big budget movie faking in 2024. Quips every 30 seconds on the dot. Blurry action sequences that make you physically bored. Like, movies shouldn't be pushing your eyes away from the screen. Scripts that feel AI generated to cover every base, every corner of the globe, but not really satisfy anyone, but just make you know that you're being like looked at in a way. Hopefully we see less of these types of movies in the coming years. Watching Lift made me feel like I was being shot with vape juice. The Watchers. What's going on here? Spooky, scary, eerie. Nothing's going on. I like Shyamalan movies. We'll talk a little bit later on his movie. He's the producer on this movie. It's his daughter's movie. She makes her movie. She tries some of her dad's tricks to no success. The characters are bland. The story's drawn out, and there's no story or substance to begin with. And the twist has no bearing, and it's just hollow. This is Christmas movie number 1 of this list, and this one feels pretty aimless. Really? I mean, like, we're just going towards the Nutcracker play. Nutcracker Suite, Nutcracker in the Street. Ben Stiller is operating at like maybe 6% energy. It's not a comedy. It's not a drama. It's David Gordon Green, baby.
We must obey the law. Always. Without exception.
I don't really know why I watched this sequel. The first I thought was like a decent, more on the nose, Squid Game-y, allegorical story type of movie. It was entertaining enough. This one is more of the same, except it's even more on the nose. It's fucking punching you directly in the nostrils. It's trying to put your fucking... It's trying to... What's the thing in Con Air where the dude punches him in the nose and it goes straight into his brain? You ever hear that myth? Or I guess it's not a myth if it's in Con Air. It must be real. This one's like that. And it devolves into like that meandering, angry masses, child reaching into the sky with the crowd saying, send the child into the sky. He's the one. He's the savior. It's that kind of movie.
Oh, we're just doing this documentary. What's it about? Ancient history.
I would not recommend this movie to anyone, honestly, because I don't really know who it's for. I would want to give this recommendation to my mom because she liked like the Brat Pack around this time, you know, St. Elmo's Fire, Pretty in Pink. Those are her movies. But if I showed her this movie, it'd probably just make her sad, dude. Like, I don't want to make her sad. It made me kind of sad. It was really embarrassing. It's super cringy to watch. The conversations are awkward as hell in this movie. It's like Nathan Fielder, except there's no joke at the end of it, and you just have to sit there and like suffer with no payoff of like a nugget of a joke or some comedy. It's ill-composed, kind of lacking like a thesis. Is he a brat or is he not a brat? He doesn't know. He wants to be, but he's not. But he doesn't want to be associated with them, but he wants to interview every single one as if he's part of their group. It's so confusing. Andrew, what do you want, Andrew? Come on, man. Andrew! You question why it was made as you're watching it. I question like the camera people who are like kind of forced to stay with Andrew McCarthy and just like capture it. I kind of catalog it at least as like an interesting document of a faded actor's regrets and delusions. It's like a capsule of nostalgic regret. So I guess it's interesting in that regard. Yeah. It's a total Guardians ripoff. No attempt at soul or wit. Another Kevin Hart. Basically, he's in the movie, but is he really in the movie? It seems like he's in the movie, but is he really there? I don't know. On top of Kevin Hart, the casting is just completely ludicrous. Cate Blanchett being in this movie is wild. It is not Cate Blanchett's year. We'll just say that right now. I don't mind Jack Black. I know a lot of people hated Claptrap, but for me, his sections were potentially like the best moments of the movie, like kind of the highlights, honestly. There are decent visual effects in the movie too. Like, it's not the worst movie I watched, obviously, but it's, you know, it's pretty close to the bottom. Look, man, I watch sci-fi. I'm sick of these space station insanity stories. They're getting old.
Houston, we have a situation.
It's boring and sterile, and Casey Affleck doesn't want to be there so much that he blasts himself out of the spaceship when we cut to credits. Not gonna lie, as most of the movie is just schlock and nothing going on, nothing new, I do like that ending. It makes me think about it every once in a while. It's dark. It's just like, fuck you for watching this movie. And I'm like, you're right. Why did I watch this movie? You know, like I said, it takes me kind of a lot to get to a 5-star rating, but the original Lion King live action, that one did it. That's a 5-star movie. So I don't even really know why I watched Mufasa. Actually, I do, because Lin-Manuel Miranda has a fucking lasso on me. He's like, hey, I wrote some good songs in this one. You think you gotta listen? I was like, okay, Lin, fine. Here we go. What do you got cooked up over here? The songs are okay. They're really not even that good. This movie triggered an acid flashback for me. It's bad, though. The movie's bad. I've got a crow. Is that really the lyrics from the 21 Jump Street? I've got a crow. Right? I watched the original Crow for the first time, actually right before watching this one. And the original, let me tell you, it casts this dark spell on you, man. It's the 90s grunge, the gritty visuals, the real-life tragic history of the movie, the cocaine-fueled insanity that just permeates every minute. The new one is a tritely cartoonish imitation of something it clearly doesn't understand. It tries to modernize it into this edgy kind of hipster alternative mindset when The Crow is full-on punk rock 90s grunge. It tries to create its own lore, tries to kind of modernize the angst and the love story that's at the core, and to me, it's just an absolute whiff.
He was in the Amazon with my mom when she was researching spiders right before she died.
What to say about Madam Web? One of the best viewing experiences of the year for me, hands down. I didn't go see it in theaters, so, you know, take that as what you will. Just had a comfy night on the couch and laughed and cringed and questioned. So many choices. Truly, it's so bad it's good. It reaches the level of The Room. Most other movies in this bottom are just not enjoyable. They're just like a chore to watch. But that cannot be said about Madam Web. I will watch Madam Web again. I loved watching Madam Web. I struggle with giving it only 1 star because, like, to be quite honest, compared to some of the other movies in this bottom ranking, I like it a lot more. So I wanted to rank it higher, but it's just so bad. It's just so baffling that it is a 1-star movie. You know, it just is. Speaking of a chore to watch, just by the book tension and drama that just sits there, floats there along with the characters. Nothing really new, nothing interesting, just a no-gravity space movie. Look how we filmed this. We're moving through this hallway. But how do we do it? Because they're floating. Acting, completely fine. Completely fine. Let me stress again how completely fine the acting was in this movie. You just kind of wonder how some of these movies get made. I like Lord of the Rings. I wouldn't say I want to watch a 2-hour, 20-minute anime movie within Lord of the Rings' lore of man in Rohan or whatever the fuck. Not something that I really care about, and doesn't seem like the people really cared about it. Rumours with a U, so you know it's sophisticated. Boring and monotonous. It just thinks it's a lot more cerebral and clever than it actually is. Some casting decisions for the world leaders, questionable, very distracting throughout the entire movie. Not really sure how much I like the camera work in this movie either. The music also kind of off. It seems too commanding and doesn't really fit the scenes a lot of the time. Premise is fine. It doesn't really add anything to the story that these are world leaders that we're following. I think that this is how this movie was sold, as like this edgy, like, we're gonna gather all these different world leaders and show how they're kind of just shitty people having sex. And it's like, okay. And what are the rumors? Are those the rumors are the things that are gonna get them? You know what? I'm actually understanding this movie a lot more now, I think, but it still sucks. Now the most divisive movie of the year, Red One. Christmas movie number 2 on the list. It's got The Rock acting hard as a motherfucking stone. It's got Chris Evans going, what do you mean, man? What do you mean, Santa? Come on, man. What do you mean? 1.5 stars. And you can put that 1.5 stars right there on the top of your Christmas tree. I hope it balances, because a half star, I don't know how you're going to work that, but that's what this movie is. So good luck. Megalopolis. What the fuck? Absolutely megalopical. I don't know what that means, but that's what I think this movie is trying to get. It instilled that in me, and I feel megalopical now. Some of the weirdest shit, but it makes total sense that it comes from a 90-year-old filmmaker who hasn't had a decent movie since the 90s. To be quite honest, pretty problematic. I feel bad for Aubrey Plaza in this movie. Like, watching it, I was like, wow, this is like, I don't want to watch what she's doing in this movie anymore. Jon Voight, like, gnawing on her shoulder. Shia LaBeouf is an absolute degenerate in this movie, and they just like captured it, and they're like, let's put this on screen. Let's let Shia LaBeouf run rampant on set, and then let's just put a camera on him. And like, let's just fucking say that's art. You know, my buddy said that he thinks that this movie was written completely by AI. And after he said that, I cannot unthink that, honestly. Some of, like, it's ripping like Shakespeare and presidential speeches. And it's like somebody just like, give me everything everywhere all at once. But that movie's actually good. And this one's like, we don't understand how to compile everything all at once. So let me give you it all spewed, which is what AI does. Yeah, kind of makes sense. There are moments in this movie, tiny glimpses of something smart. They're very small, very hard to see, and they shoot off like a shooting star, and you can't, fuck, did you catch it? You saw it? And it's just, there's so much bad that when you see the shooting star, it's just like, that was cool. And then you realize where you're sitting, and it's in this like fucking pile of shit. And you're like, oh yeah, that star is just a glimpse of something I'll never be able to actually enjoy in this pile of shit. I don't think I'll ever watch this again.
What do you think of this boner I got?
This movie tries so hard, but it just does not heckin' have it, man. It's trying to be that standard, like, psychological horror Jordan Peele movie that everyone's trying to make nowadays. It's like, let's just do some psychological shit in the back, and let's have it kind of thematic to something that people will understand. It's boring. It doesn't make any sense. It just does not grab you. I wasn't on board for the ride. Made me a little. I'm also kind of getting sick of Dan Stevens just playing like the same guy in every movie. Despicable Me 4. Yeah. Jerry thinks everything he says and does is just inherently funny. The premise is fine. Execution is bonkers. There's a scene with the dudes from Mad Men, and it kind of retroactively like hurts Mad Men's lore and history to watch that scene, and it's like trying to do like a Naked Gun type movie. All these references and all these things like you care about and understand now. Even though Mad Men's like, I don't know, what, like 15 years ago, Jerry? I know you probably liked Mad Men when it came out, but you made the movie 15 years later, son! It just feels lazy, man. Like, why didn't you frost it? Just keep swimming, just keep swimming, just keep swimming. Well, we've reached the 2 stars, everyone. But at the very bottom of the 2-star category is this Max documentary that loudly whispers, "We can make documentaries slap too, Netflix." It's a weird movie about internet sleuths who are trying to figure out a person's identity after they died. It kind of suffers from the modern doc problem that I see, which is you get a bunch of uninteresting interviewees add up to like a feature maybe of a subject that you probably don't even really care about, and you could have just read the Wikipedia article on and gained everything you needed. But let's put it to you in an hour and a half, or if it's Netflix, probably like a 3-part series of like 40 minutes each or whatever the fuck. I made a vow after watching this to watch less of these types of documentaries, so maybe you'll see like 1 or 2 more, but really, I'm good, man.
Can you still levitate? I certainly can. What you waiting for? Go on.
Well, now, this is a mostly harmless movie involving Elijah Wood as a failed magician reconnecting with his estranged daughter in the New Zealand wilderness. If that pitch kind of confuses you, you're not alone. The humor and the pacing of this movie, it's pretty rough. It's actually really rough. I generously kind of bumped this one up. I kind of wanted to get it a little lower, but I was just like, there's some heart here, and I don't want to be a cynical asshole my whole life. The magician character, though, it feels like something that was relevant like 25 years ago. There's a zany tameness that this movie exudes that is really strange. I don't know. I didn't really get this one, but it might connect with other people potentially.
If you want to get on in this life, there are things you have to ignore.
Small things like these. Not a great movie. Not a great movie. I think, how do I say this? Cillian Murphy is a great actor. When people see Cillian Murphy in a movie now, after Oppenheimer, they automatically attribute it to great movie, in my opinion. But this is not the case. You expect too much after Cillian Murphy wins the Oscar, but there's not really much of anything going on here, is there? Luckily, this year saw the release of a vastly different Irish film, way different energy, that ended up much higher up on this list, but small things like these, small things that I don't want to see. Dude, I feel bad ranking this one low because if you watch it, it clearly has a lot of heart. It's Kevin Smith trying to be like, guys, I had a heart attack and now I want to show you that I love movies. It's trying really hard. It's being really honest, and there's a love of movies attached. It's just bad. It's homaging a lot of stuff and it's dialogue and plot, but it just feels so forced, kind of lame, honestly, too. It's like, Kevin, what do you like? I understand you're trying to like make like your like indie Oscar type movie, but it's like, this is like more of a straight to DVD kind of movie, Kevin. You'd think that Kevin Smith would be more on top of it at this point in his career, but I mean, personally looking at his last few movies, it seems like he's not trying that hard anymore. Oh shit, Blitz! So it's about a mom following her artistic passions and freedoms, firsthand racism and persecution in World War II, and a boy who's on a Stand By Me, Empire of the Sun adventure, smack dab in the middle. It's just too much. It's just too much. And it's unbelievably boring. The score of this film reads like someone who wasn't confident with the filmmaking that they instilled into the scene, so they defensively droned it up to 11 to juice any form of tension possible out of the scene. There's a scene with Boy George kicking a rock down the road, which is a nice image, a nice juxtaposition of innocence against the backdrop of war. But that's honestly what this movie feels like, just kicking a rock down the road, nowhere to go. This movie is for someone. It's not for me. But yeah, I did not like the look of this movie at all. I thought it looked terrible. Zoe Saldana's performance is good. Selena Gomez, better than she is in Only Murders in the Building. I'll tell you that much. The music, the singing is sweet, but I wouldn't say it's good. It's not something I actually want to listen to. The story is also, it's just so scattered. It's just not good. It just didn't work. Oh man, I can't wait so I can get to some of the higher rankings so I can like have some positivity, because this movie really didn't do anything for me, man. I tried to get into it, but it quickly just fell into that generic dark grim horror territory and kind of just played that same note the whole time. I started making dinner while watching. So like maybe I wasn't giving it my full attention. This one, as far as like all the movies I watched this year, the low ranking could honestly be on me. Like I'll shoulder some of the blame for not engaging fully with it, but it didn't hook me. It didn't pull me. It didn't throw me around like a horror movie should. Toss me in the air, keep me up there, hold me in the air, throw me on the ground, exorcism style. I didn't feel it. I just wasn't about it. This movie is far too long. Tone is kind of middling. And it just doesn't pack a punch, but you can fly me to the moon. Let me play up on the stars. Let me know when. In other words, be true. In other words, I didn't like the movie. The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. Guy Ritchie just needs to slow down, man. Make it feel like these are movies that you're actually putting time and effort into now. Yeah, stop pumping out 2 movies a year. Think a little harder on the titles, too. The Gentleman, Operation Fortune, Rouge de Gaulle. These movies are just mid. The titles are fucking terrible. I actually did enjoy the Gentleman TV show this year, though. I would check that out. If you're actually looking for some good Guy Ritchie stuff this year, check it out. I can't keep defending Matthew Vaughn anymore. He has not made a good movie since the first Kingsman. Argylle, I guess you could say, is fun. It's kind of draining. It's cartoony and uncanny. The sequences are packaged in a way that doesn't feel like inviting. He clearly has learned no lessons about amnesia storylines after Kingsman: The Golden Circle. I hate amnesia storylines in movies. Stop. The audience knows who they are. Don't let the characters suffer for an entire film not knowing who they are. We know, you know. I want to like these movies, man. I like Matthew Vaughn's early stuff, but I just can't. I can't.
Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory is one of my favorite movies.
Oh, it's so fucking good.
Like,
all that chocolate.
It hurts me to put this low. I mean, you might not consider it even a real movie, but I've been following Conor O'Malley's stuff for a while now, and I think it's some of the best stuff out there as far as like new age media entertainment. I think it's really solid. Rap World, though, unfortunately, doesn't seem to rise to like the wit or the substance level of some of Conor O'Malley's other projects. The structure, it's wonderfully loose, but it's dangerous if you don't actually get the good stuff. And the comedy, it's just off-putting in this movie, and it's not like clever. There are some moments that made me chuckle, of course, but the plot, it's kind of basic. The sting of the project was just not felt. But it did make me revisit The Mask, so overall, good experience. Venom: The Last Dance. Smaller in story in a way that makes the movie feel unimportant, but grander in scale in a way that makes the movie feel cheap. It's confounding. This is what you go to the movies for right here, man. Moana 2? More like Moana 2 stars, am I right? Thank you. Mean Girls. Actual musical where I don't want to sing. Look, it's not terrible. It just doesn't need to be made. Like some kid out there is going to watch this version first, and then they're going to watch the original Mean Girls, and then their brain is just going to be twisted incorrectly for their whole lives, and it's just no way up. Fun B movie. It starts actually pretty strong, but then loses steam pretty quickly. Just becomes tedious. I can't really hate on it too much because I knew exactly what I was in for. Plain, underwater, sharks. There's no way up. You got it. Yeah, you got it. The piano lesson. I think I missed a lesson in this one, honestly. It was fine. This one might be the hardest to swallow for some people so far in this list, but Longlegs, I think, is the most disappointing movie of the year for me. The movie starts strong and gets worse and worse and worse and worse as it goes. There's this experience that I get when I go to see movies every once in a while. It's pretty rare, but every once in a while a movie will trigger it. And it's this irritable, restless leg syndrome, this itching desire to get up and just straight up walk out of the theater and experience my life outside of anything that this movie is doing. Like, I could be going and doing other things. I could be living my life and experiencing other, even if I was sitting on my couch, flipping through my phone, like that is where I'd rather be right now. I love movies, and when I get that feeling, I know it's not a good movie then. Yeah, Longlegs did that for me this year. Truly, I just don't think the filmmaking choices were well-founded. The plot, the character backstory, and Nick Cage's performance are just ludicrous. I don't really respect a lot of the decisions. The tone is cluttered. Why is this movie called Longlegs? Because in one line early on, he spews some self-absorbed dialogue and he says where he wore his long legs today. And no, because it's edgy and dark and Longlegs sounds cool for a title for a movie that nobody knows anything about. You can call it a modern Silence of the Lambs. You can call it a modern Stephen King. But to me, it felt like somebody that was grasping at ideas that they're not really able to achieve. I don't want to upset the 30 to 40-year-old men who grew up with the Transformers cartoon, but this movie was kind of cheeks. I found the storytelling kind of lazy. The messaging is all over the place. The character turns are kind of extreme. Beep, bop, boop, I'm Megatron! I don't actually know why I'm talking about an animated Transformers movie. Keegan-Michael Key, he's pretty good at it. I was a Garfield guy as a kid, and I still am, I guess. I hate Mondays. The Strange 2000s Garfields didn't do it justice, and this one didn't really either. I didn't really dislike my experience watching this movie. It's brisk, playful, the animation is decent, but it has this hyperactive, modern ADHD animated movie quality that in a way feels like it's missing the entire essence of Garfield. The laziness, the monotony, the sarcasm, it just doesn't feel right in the Garfield movie, unfortunately. Kraven the Hunter. Look, I'm sick of talking about these Sony movies. I think it's the last time, so we're good. We got this shit in the bag. Let's go. This one, is more founded as far as like a superhero story goes, where there's like this lion man who's got lion powers and he's like a good hunter. So like the way that he's animalistically moving across like the frame and like he's hunting, he's Kraven and he's the hunter. I was like, you know what? This movie makes sense. Like I get it. I get this movie. And like I got it. I watched this movie because Jonah Ray was in it, and I listened to the Nerdist podcast like 10 years ago. It's fine. It's kind of trying to be bad, but you can always fall back on the movie being bad because it's trying to be bad. Not really my tempo, but it does begin the 2.5 star bracket of the list, so congratulations. Half-baked, schlubby, streaming schlop. At least you got two of the Ocean's crew back together. That's the novelty that this movie was probably sold on. This movie just is. There's the name brand version of this movie coming up in a little bit, and even that one's not that great. Christmas movie number 3. This one is Netflix's Hallmark movie with Lindsay Lohan, and you get exactly what you pay for. 2.5 stars. Jackpot, exclamation point, really weird premise, kind of makes no sense, but it really doesn't matter. You're here for the John Cena Aquafina shenanigans, and they're not bad together. John Cena low-key got the juice. His character in Jackpot is kind of restrained, but his comedy chops are great. Paul Feig, he knows how to direct a decent movie. There's a looseness to this movie that I found refreshing because the looseness leads me to something that they found. Like, you can not only have riffing. This movie has structure and it has goals and it has story. And then within it, it has riffing that actually kind of hits sometimes, which is nice. You toss it on, I don't think you're really gonna be mad about watching this movie, Joker Folie à Deux. Look, I kind of like the first Joker. This one, though, more simplistic than the first film. Kind of cartoony and not really in the way that Phillips is intending. The relationship, pretty hollow, not at all believable. There's just not as much depth in this one. Kind of does cheapen the first one retroactively. It's still somewhat compelling, though. This movie's kind of weird. Seems like a script that got dusted off from like 15 years ago, and they're like, wait a minute, we have this one still. Netflix people were probably looking for a vehicle for Millie Bobby Brown, and they said, oh, she's already like an alien and Stranger Things, and she's already been Sherlock Holmes. Can she be a princess? Okay, we got her, princess. We need a prince. What's the algorithm say? Nick Robinson's hot. Okay, get Nick Robinson. We got him. Okay, cool. Got the visual effects company. We have them under our thumb, of course. We can work them. Let's greenlight this one. Let's do this.
God, I missed you, Axel.
Bro, I don't even remember. I'm not gonna lie. I don't even remember this one. Wait. He has a daughter. Orion in the Dark. I guess I shouldn't have expected a Charlie Kaufman children's film to be straightforward, but I don't really think this movie works. There are some cute moments, some clever ideas, some decent voice acting, but the movie gets really meta and then kind of eats itself, taking huge turns in the story and tone. Watching this, I couldn't really imagine like a kid in enjoying this, let alone even like finishing the movie. I just don't really know who the movie's for. Janet Planet, highly disappointed with this movie. I anticipated really liking this movie, so maybe I hyped it up a bit much. It was just boring, and I understand like slice of life movies. I like slice of life movies, but this one's like a slice of life movie with nothing to even like slice. There's no life. What's it slicing? No, there's life. That's wrong. There's life there, but it's not slicing anything. It's like chop, chop. Wait. Walk down a road. 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 Chop. What to say about such a film? One of the more experimental movies I watched this year, a family drama about a clan of Squatches. It keeps your attention though, I will say. You really can follow the Squatch dynamics. It's really interesting. It's almost like watching a nature documentary for Squatches. The ending shot is great. It kind of brings the whole point of the movie to like the previous hour and a half, but I wish that it kind of got there earlier and did something with that premise, but it's cool. It's silly. It's weird. I liked it. The Last Stop in Yuma County. Yeah, this movie is a solid 2.5. I would say for all my ratings, there's probably like a lower, middle, and upper threshold for all these movies. And The Last Stop in Yuma County, that's a solid 2.5. We're getting into some upper half now, I'd say. Like this movie's not really bad. It does everything it's trying to achieve. It's just not like doing anything outside of it to make it like a better movie than it could be. That's kind of my 2.5 rating. It just never got that compelling to me. The build-ups really never paid off, or some of the build-ups, they never even like got time to build up, you know? They just like instantly were cut. So it's kind of cluttered. It's not fully successful. The homages to people like Tarantino are direct, and I like these types of movies, but in my opinion, emulating Tarantino is a trap because he's already emulating something else. So you're 2 steps removed, and it just feels kind of like empty or reaching. It's a fine movie though. I don't think most people would be as disappointed as I am watching it. I think they'd be probably pretty entertained with it. Arthur the King. This movie's about a dog. Don't get me wrong. It's not that, you know, you think it's about a king. See, you think you're like, oh, King Arthur. Let's watch King Arthur movie. And it's not. It's about a dog. You can really tell that the marketing team leaned on dog for this one. The movie Dog, because like the colors and the like that. They're like, let's just try to trick people into thinking that's the dog movie. This is a decent feel-good movie about a dog with Marky Mark as his sidekick doing his thing. The story is straightforward. The side character's pretty good. If that interests you, then hell yeah, you're gonna like it, man. But yeah, for me, landed solidly in the middle, 2.5. Some edgy, sexy, pseudo-intellectual jerk chicken with Bilbo and Wednesday that, when simply boiled down, is just a story about teachers and students fucking. It's weird, man. I get the idea. There's some meat to the premise here and there. The performances are fine, you know, they're doing their job, but it's just not a great watch. I would never really recommend this movie to anybody. From the sick and twisted mind of John Krasinski comes the truly unique premise of what if your imaginary friends stuck around after you forgot them. The movie doesn't feel as powerful or as funny or as significant as it wants to be. It's kind of trying to hit all these little boundaries, and maybe it does for some people, but for me, it did not. A lot of it takes place in a hospital, which I'm sorry, like you go to the movies to see things that you want to like see and experience, and you don't want to be spending a whole movie in a hospital. That's why you watch ER at home in the comfort of your own home, where you can just like be like, yeah, I can experience well, I don't know, maybe people do want to be on the hospital. What the fuck? Why do people watch ER? And John Krasinski, he's whimsically dancing around the hospital with his daughter while also suffering from like a seriously tame illness that leaves him bedridden. Like I said, guys, I don't want to be cynical. I'm trying not to hate on it too much.
I don't bang out 10 hits by lunch. I need to live my songs. So that's what I'm going to go and do.
One of several musical biopics to come out this year. These are just getting old, so I really won't spend a lot of time on them. Marissa Bella is great in it, but just check out Industry if you haven't already. Like I said, not going to spend a lot of time on them. Greedy People has some fun twists and turns, but ultimately it falls short. For the most part, I can't really remember any of the story points other than some of the dark moments that really come from the movie. It just never really rose above a certain degree of entertainment. There is some pretty shoddy accent work throughout, too, that takes you out a bit.
Have you done this before?
That's not terrible. And if you like dark crime stories, you'll probably actually really like this movie. Similar to The Crow, I watched the original Roadhouse with this one back to back. Completely different films. The original is the pinnacle of 80s macho man sexy magic schlock, and it's amazing. The new one has Conor McGregor wandering around butt-ass naked. So sexy to some. The new one has an energy. It's not entertaining. I like the Florida Keys setting, but the tone and stakes become so bonkers that it just becomes kind of a caricature of the original. But I think that the new one also actually does feel like a good 2024 movie in a way. So, successful in that regard. Ricky Stenicki. There are decent bits in this movie. To be quite honest, I don't really remember them. John Cena has comedic talent, so it is worth a watch. I think he's really going for it in this one. When does Peacemaker Season 2 come out?
Wow, you had a full day.
Ethan Coen's solo film debut, Wild Story. Ha! Good performances. Ha! Margaret Qualley is on fire right now. I think the Coen brothers need to get back together. Drive-Away Dolls has that zany Coen stuff that you tend to love from those films, but it does feel like a little less polished, a little bit maybe like it's past its prime, or like, I don't know, maybe just not chiseled. I hope that they come back together because I really want another great Coen film. The Ballad of Buster Scruggs is like top 5 for me. So like they can still do it. Just need to fucking come back together and get that shit worked out. Gladiator 2, more of the same, but lesser. I like the original Gladiator. I don't think it's like an amazing movie. The hype has never really been there for me, I guess, on that one. So the sequel wasn't something I was like super jazzed about. Ridley Scott seems like he's at a point in his career now where he's like, you know what? That's good enough. Let's film it. Yeah, that'll work. I've done a shot like that before. Yeah, put some sharks and shit in it. It'll be way cooler. Paul Mescal is okay. I like the performances for the Caesars, but they just can't match up to Joaquin, and I see way too much of them in the movie. I don't need them that much. It doesn't feel distinct enough to really warrant another go-around, but you still get to see Denzel absolutely tearing it up every second he's on screen. I will be giving Best Supporting Actor award this year to Denzel Washington.
What can I say? I like playing with my phone.
I like this movie, but I struggled with this movie. It's a fun premise. I like the filmmakers behind it, but the performances and the plot just did not really add up to what I would say is a great movie. I especially felt that the movie was dragging in the final third act when we've already had all the reveals that we need, and we just need to, as they say,
get on with it. Yes, get on with it.
Dude, I'm not gonna lie. I watched all 4 Kung Fu Panda movies in a row for the first time, and they are all basically the same movie. Maxine, I'm still trying to like this movie more than I did. Something about a red light. Since the time I watched it, it just keeps dropping further and further down my rankings. I really like X and Pearl, like most people. I think they're really fun, really fresh. I think Ty West got potentially the most shine, the most attention from Hollywood he's had in his career. And it seems like he wanted to include some of those thoughts, some of those experiences into his trilogy ending Maxine. It's just messy and uninteresting. The performances are not on the level of the last 2. I wish that he kind of took the ideas of this movie and made it into his next film,
You're a fucking movie star.
Salem's Lot. Yeah, that's probably shouldn't be as high as it is, honestly, now that I'm looking at this list. But it's not that bad. As someone who has never read the book, it felt like an extended Castle Rock episode, honestly. I'm sure a lot of what is good has been stolen from the original. Nobody is safe, not even children. You don't really feel that watching a lot of stuff nowadays. The characters are basically cutouts of real people. It is way too rushed. It definitely should have been a miniseries. I like Lewis Pullman as an actor, but he kind of has nothing to do here. But I like the creepiness. I like the vampire stuff. The way they get blasted across the room is pretty cool. Overall, I liked the stakes of the movie. What if Malick made a Friday the 13th movie? The movie, in my opinion, is cooler as a pitch more than an actual experience. Probably could have just been a short film, but you got to give it credit for trying something nobody else has. It feels a nice niche as a horror movie. What if we never left the killer's perspective and just lumbered through the forest with them? It's cool, but don't play this at a horror movie party or people will be bored. My first advanced screening, so I had a great time in a packed theater, honestly. A lot of people have questioned what if Y2K actually happened, so it's nice to see it finally explored 25 years after the fact. Unfortunately, the movie kind of peaks at the party, then gets kind of predictable. It's fun, don't get me wrong, but once you know what kind of movie you're in for, you can easily anticipate some of like the final showdowns and whatnot. Scenes and ideas from Shaun of the Dead and Zombieland are basically copied and pasted, And I'm left wondering if it's like homaging these movies or kind of just like straight ripping them off, you know? The movie sheds characters too quickly to sustain its energy over its run also. It's kind of a weird movie too, because like one death leaves you wondering if Kyle Mooney is like making a 1917 joke that just went completely over the audience's heads. That being said, it has probably the best death scene in a movie this year. And let me know which one you think it is, because I'm curious if you saw this movie. Christmas movie number 4. This one has a Christopher Guest, Richard Linklater structure with a Wes Anderson, Jared Keeso energy, made as a Christmas vehicle for Scorsese's daughter, featuring an appearance from Stotts from Country Club Adjacent. And if you think that's a lot going on, that's because it is. It's the Christmas movie that actually stuck with me the most, though. I will give it that. It's unique and it gives you vibes. And that's what, Christmas is all about, is the vibes. Godzilla x Kong, the New Empire. Godzilla vs. Kong, not gonna lie, one of the top movies of the year for me in 2021. I loved it. Godzilla x Kong is a bit more of the same, but a bit more underwhelming, a bit more dumb. Character work is arguably better, but I found myself more disengaged from the characters in the previous film. Felt more pipeliney to me. But the first one was like, we gotta prove something. We gotta show people we know what we're doing with Godzilla and Kong. Now we're like, let's just do it again. Look, everything's been regurgitated. I've accepted it at this point. I would say that the Ghostbusters movies are some of the better regurgitations. They do the job. They might hit the feels if they're lucky. They're a fun romp. At least we get a big movie with Paul Rudd and Carrie Coon having a good time, you know?
Can I tell you something else? What? Buster makes me feel good. Makes me feel good.
This one actually feels like more of a true sequel to the originals in a way than the Afterlife film. Maybe it's just the fact that they're like back in the original firehouse and back in New York. The movie has way too many things going on, way too many plot lines, and in a way, it kind of like doesn't even feel like this movie's real. You know? Anybody else feel that? The character has humble beginnings. They have a breakout success. They go on tour. They get lost in the drugs. They cheat on their partner. They are ultimately forgiven because their music is just that damn good. They play a big show. Potentially, they die. More fun than you'd expect. Humor is actually elevated at times. There's like bits and like actual payoffs that you'd be like, oh fuck, yeah, somebody thought about that. I love the practical feel that they go for the most part that they utilize. That really brings something to the movie. I will say, watching this movie, I was like, God damn, like I wish movies felt more like someone was at the fucking helm. A lot of interesting elements, a lot of different ingredients. But by the end, you're like, wait a minute, what was the recipe we were making? Oh, yeah. Beetlejuice. Yep. Deadpool and Wolverine. I was kind of let down by this movie. I had some chuckles here and there, but it was kind of everything I was worried about with Disney adopting Deadpool. The jokes are more tame, even if they're like trying to tout edginess. The story is more diluted. The third act is boring and devolves into that classic timeline-destroying danger, which just eventually turns into the Charlie Brown parents yelling back and forth after a while of like, you're just like, oh my God, man. End the movie, man. I know. I don't give a shit. I just don't think we needed to revisit the early X-Men and tertiary characters of the 2000s. I really just don't know what the point was. The first two also were made by action directors, so they have like this visceral sequence feel. And this movie is directed by Sean Levy, who has been making consistently boringly directed movies for the last few years. I'm kind of surprised this movie made as much money as it did, but I wonder if most people left with the same bad taste in their mouth that I've had with the MCU. Like, did it help people get back in? I don't know. I don't think so. Biggest heist ever. Dumbest title 2024. Wolves. We've reached absolute middle. No greater, no worse. It's fine. It's okay. We don't want to overreach. Don't show too much emotion. Don't try too hard. Give them some good visuals to keep them. You following the story? Don't need to. All right. Let's cap it off. Yeah. Christmas movie number 5, kinda. Not really interested in the argument, but it is basically Phone Booth Die Hard, and that's just fine. The car scene especially was really well done towards the end of that. Some of that filmmaking with where the strangling and where's the gun, and oh my goodness, that shot, I was thinking about that shot a lot. I really love that shot. That's basically the only cool sequence in the movie, but there's some other stuff. Jason Bateman's good at playing a nihilistic, nonchalant villain. You could do a lot worse in this movie, you know? That's what I'm thinking.
How do you feel right now?
Fine.
I think this movie was a pretty good debut for Anna Kendrick, but I don't think the movie really gels fully. The game show element of the movie is the selling point, but like in reality, it really has no bearing or impact on the serial killer that the movie is really trying to be about. You know, you can feel the amplification that Kendrick is imparting into it, especially when she takes control of the game show. You can feel someone like writing this story in a way. And the scene that I'm pretty sure is completely fabricated, where they go out to eat after and he's following her through the parking lot. It's the best scene in the movie. So it's successful at times, you know, it's successful at some things it's trying to do. But overall, I feel like the movie doesn't fully work or doesn't really know what it's trying to do or say. And honestly, I'm just kind of tired of Netflix serial killer stuff. My Hero Academia, you're next. Doesn't come close to the highs of Heroes Rising, which is my personal favorite of the My Hero movies. I absolutely love that movie. But all the other My Hero movies have, you know, just been kind of fine. They have cool moments, some decent character work, but they tend to feel kind of like afterthoughts to the original series, which most anime movies are. That's fine. The most recent season of My Hero, though, however, top 3 season of television this year. Phenomenal. Tears rolling down the cheeks. Great show. Can't wait for the final season. You're a spaceman. Watch out! Potentially the weirdest movie of 2024. I kind of expected more plot in this movie, but for what you get, I think it does like a pretty good job. Following Uncut Gems, Adam Sandler has a lot of eyes on him as far as like his dramatic role choices go. And I think it's nice what he does here without really going full swing, loud, boisterous, like huge character work. It's kind of understated, kind of inward. I respected the performance. The tone, the visuals, and kind of the weird twist on that standard plot brought this one up for me. Paul Dano whispering in your ear as a giant spider is enough to give this one a watch, I'd say. Cute little animated movie. Kind of overhyped in my opinion. When it came into my radar, people were praising the fuck out of it. It's nice, but nothing that truly moved me, I guess. Don't really think it's for kids, but it's a bit kind of silly and simple for adults. I know a lot of people will probably be upset at this ranking, but it's what I feel. The Book of Clarence. What a fucking trip, man. Doesn't give a fuck. Probably gonna piss a lot of people off if you watch it, but if you're there for it, it's a lot of fun. Zany, silly, pretty uneven, I would say. Not everything hits how it wants to, but there's really no other movie like it. So for that, I kind of respect it.
Do you know what that means? I am justice!
I had some good laughs with this one. It's goofy and wild and it feels like a good throwback to some of the raunchy buddy comedies of the past. I was very curious to check this one out too, as this is Max Barbaco's directorial follow-up to Palm Springs, which is a 5-star movie. Brothers is not perfect, but it is a lot of fun, and I like this movie. I'd probably watch a sequel if they made one. The Bike Riders. This movie is solid, yet kind of baffling. You think you're in for one kind of movie, and it kind of flips it and subverts the male gang machismo that you're expecting from it. It's a much more mellow and subtle drama. A bit hard for me to kind of wrap my head around the point of the film, but when you explore it more like I have, and I thought more on it a little bit, I'm a bit more pleasantly rewarded with what this movie was trying to say. Also, I'd say Best Supporting Actress, Jodie Comer. She delivers a pretty flawless Midwest performance. Gotta give it up. This is a weird movie, but it kind of lingers with you. The premise breeds a lot of tension, and it's milked pretty well, I'd say. Anne Hathaway's pretty good in it. It's been a while since I've seen her kind of tackle such an interesting, complex role. Could be a very uncomfortable watch for some, and some people might think this movie is just straight up terrible, but it kind of strangely works, in my opinion.
Nosferatu.
Ah, man, yeah, another kind of disappointing one for me, not gonna lie. Lighthouse, 5-star movie for me, you know, high expectations. I really do like The Northman too, actually. Yeah, Nosferatu, it's so strange to think that the original Nosferatu, which was made like over 100 years ago, felt more nuanced to me when I watched it, and you have to read everything through text bubbles. I kind of struggled with Robert Eggers' version. I didn't think it really added much to anything like that another vampire movie hadn't done, and really I think it leaned more on just like the shocking value of watching a person writhe. I also found some of the other characters and plots to be completely unnecessary to the film, like Aaron Taylor Johnson and honestly Willem Dafoe. Like I really didn't like enjoy the time I spent with those characters, unfortunately. Some imagery was really well designed, I will say that. I think it's probably going to be higher on some other people's lists, but for me, I didn't really love it. You get on that Rebel Ridge. Solid Netflix movie. Honestly, I think about raising this rating a little higher every once in a while. Steeped in emotion and drama, I really like the lead performance of this movie. The gray area in this movie is the highlight, I'd say. It makes it stand out as something a little bit smarter than your average just corruption story. The conflict appears to be pretty black and white at the beginning, but it kind of unravels and you start to understand all sides and the motivations of the situation involved. It's deeper than you expect and has solid action and visuals. I think a lot of people would really like this movie, and I think I'll revisit it and maybe give it a little bit of higher rating, honestly. Lisa Frankenstein. Better than you'd think. I know the name is dumb, and as much as I'm kind of over the warm bodies weird teen fantasy romance movie, I'd be lying if I said this didn't have some charm.
What you gonna do? What you gonna...
That ain't no Reba song.
I'd say a majority of this rating being kind of where it's at is based on the stellar direction in this movie. There are some of the most dynamic action shots of 2024, I'd say, in this film. It's just, it's surprising the level of like competency that this franchise is displaying being 4 movies in. The humor is harmless. The story doesn't really matter. So, you know, bad boys as usual. A Complete Unknown. I believe this is the last musical biopic of the list. It is the highest. It has like a better structure where it takes like a snapshot of some years of the artist's life rather than trying to do like the whole thing. I don't think it really avoids most of the pitfalls of every other musical biopic though, of like the cheating, the like, this guy's a genius, we just got to deal with his ass, you know, stuff like that. A lot of this movie is just reaction shots of like people being like, what is he saying? Oh my gosh. And I found it a bit silly. And also, I like Timothée Chalamet as an actor a lot. Unfortunately for me, when I watched the movie, I could never get outside of Timothée Chalamet doing like a Bob Dylan impression type of thing. There were moments where I was like, oh, nice man, nice man. For the most part, kind of cartoony. And I was like, oh. The Beekeeper. So much fun. It's trashy and pulp, and it knows exactly what it is. The villains are hammy. The action's insane. They're taking a visual note from John Wick, but in my opinion, it actually feels more justified in scene. It's just a fun action movie. And honestly, I question if it should be like half a star higher, which leads us into the 3.5. Oh, you're cooking, Frankie. Lover, stalker, killer. You know you try to stay away, but sometimes your girlfriend is watching one on the living room TV. You walk through, you hear the solemn voiceover, and you see a shadowy actor walking under a streetlight at night in the dramatization, and you sit down and you embrace the darkness. This story is actually a bit more clever, at least in the way it retells the true crime story. It keeps the audience on their toes structure-wise, so it's a bit higher on the list, I guess. Lover, stalker, killer, and Late Night with the Devil. We've reached the double dark section of the list. This movie is a highly stylized 70s talk show with a spooky twist that they may have invited a real demonic presence as a guest. It keeps you on your toes. It's interesting enough. A bit overhyped to me, but an enjoyable movie. A good movie to watch around Halloween. The Greatest Night in Pop. I mean, what are we doing here? How many movies have we already gone through? Why did I make such a concentrated effort to watch so many 2024 movies? 150 movies? This editing is going to be outrageous. Go outside, you fucking loser. Go on a walk. Look a stranger in the eye. Get some chicken tikka masala. And if you aren't going outside, why aren't you watching like classics on your watch list, man? Why are you watching that middling Netflix rubbish when you should be watching all that jazz? You're suffering through Borderlands and be relaxing with some Master Chef. You watched Megalopolis. And you've never seen Apocalypse Now. Get your shit together. Boy Kills World. What's it all for? Do I simply have to bear witness to the current age and state of movie making? Waning interest? Overbloated IPs? AI-driven metric standards? Services like TikTok, Goingo, Boingo, cannibalizing all attention, destroying every shred of storytelling nuance that I hold dear. No. I will stand firm forever like Boy Who Kills World, for I am a storyteller. Sperm World? I watched a movie called Sperm World. Sperm World. Yeah, it was actually pretty good. All right. Back on track. A Different Man. Interesting movie. I haven't seen The Elephant Man, which feels like I assume like a necessary watch for this film. I think the movie works in a lot of ways though. Some of the dialogue or moments I feel are kind of a bit on the nose or manufactured. The structure is the classic bait and switch or kind of like be careful what you wish for mechanism. The acting portion and the conflict that rises from it doesn't like fully click. I'm glad it highlights interesting looking people who otherwise probably would not get any screen time. That I think really makes this movie special. It's a tough movie to turn on, but I'm glad that I did. Man, it took me a long time to finally get around to this one. I'm glad I did. I think it is a really good movie. I really like the performances of this movie. I think that's kind of where most of its strengths lie, obviously. I don't really think it's like the ultra compelling, dramatic, Oscar baity type movie it's really like maybe trying to be. I think it does settle nicely into like a middle ground of not trying to be that, but it just didn't really fully capture me on some of the levels it was trying to, I guess. Wicked. You done did me wicked. You done did me wicked. Why'd you do me so wicked? I had a good time at this movie. I enjoy musicals. I'll say it. I enjoy musicals. I'm not gonna lie though, I thought this movie would flop. Before it came out, I was like, nobody's gonna go see this movie, man. Nobody cares about Wicked anymore. I don't think the star power's there. I was wrong. I'll say it. I was wrong. Ariana Grande, actually really good in the movie. Gotta give it to her. Her singing is fine. I've never really been a huge fan, but her comedic chops are really solid. They're good. I like the story. It made me do a deep dive on the Land of Oz, like the history and the lore. The movie itself, I'd say it feels like a Disney ride. In a good way. Clint Eastwood can be really hit or miss for me. His highs can lead to some compelling, thought-provoking work. His lows can feel out of touch, silly, and saccharine. Juror number 2, which I guess may be his final film, really toes the line between those 2 points, I'd say. Overall, I think it comes out on top, though. There's a lot of good character work. The turns in the story are really effective, I'd say. The performance is really solid. There are absolutely moments of some eye-rolling cheese that overpower kind of the overarching dramatic goals, you'd say. But I enjoyed the film. A fun riff on 12 Angry Men from an extremely distinguished filmmaker. Skywalkers, a love story. An extremely gripping documentary. Woo! Yeah, son! Yeah, son! Yeah! A bit manufactured feeling in the narrative department for this documentary, but you just can't deny the absolute truth and terror of the climbing sections in this film. It's fucking insane. Some incredible images, some fucking sweaty palm moments. Really smart documentary, the kind of documentary that I like to watch nowadays. The closest you'll get to Free Solo, if that's your kind of documentary and you're itching for something like that, give this one a try. Oh, Conclave. What a conclave. This movie is executed well as far as like filmmaking goes, I'd say. Obvious parallels to like Presidency. I just feel like it really doesn't hold a lot of interest to a modern audience. I'm sorry, like popes and nuns and all these like horror movies that are like about becoming a nun that is fucked up with a demon or whatever. It's like, that's for like 10 people max, man. Give me an interesting movie with interesting characters that I want to watch. The sound design feels extremely close in this movie. Like it's trying to pull some tricks on you to make it think it's like a really profound, like, oh man, I can really hear every sigh. And like, that's something that really makes this deep. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love sound design where you can hear like deep internal things, but like, I think it just like leans on the fact that it's like being prestige. But some of the images do stand out in my mind, especially the umbrella shot. So I will say that this movie has something going for it, and it's a better movie overall than the ones below. Marmalade. Didn't really know what I was in for with this one, but I liked the ride. The story expands in a way that you don't really see coming, which was fun for me as an audience member. You think you're in for one story and you get kind of whipped around in different directions until you finally get your bearings. When I watched this movie, I was desperate for fresh voices. I'm pretty sure I just watched like Godzilla x Kong and I just needed something new. Keir O'Donnell is an actor I've seen, but this is his debut film as a director, and it feels fresh. It feels like a new voice. And in 2024, that's the shit I've been gravitating towards. Caddo Lake, I'd say worst poster of the year. It's a weird sense of scale on the sides with the boat and like the assets. Like, I just feel like things are like dragged and dropped and never like touched. Then you have this symbol, which like I forget what it means in the story, but I'm pretty sure it means 69? The movie, though, takes some turns you don't see coming. You think you're in for a standard missing kids story. You settle in for some depressing journey, and yeah, I mean, you still get that. But it gets far weirder and far more interesting as you go. The supernatural heat just gets turned up to high at like 45 minutes in, and you're just like, oh, fuck, we're doing this? Sort of like a Stephen King Annihilation hybrid. I got more than I expected with this one. You've never seen or probably heard of this movie. It's a super low budget action drama featuring writer, director, action star Bren Foster. And I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of good. The action choreography is realistic yet intense. The drama, it does kind of dip into that like Sound of Freedom boomer propaganda feel territory at times, but it tends to be a little bit smarter and kind of a little bit more elevated in its execution. I'm not saying you should watch this movie, but I'm saying it surprised me. A real pain. You know, I wanted to like this movie more, but I had an overall good experience watching it. Kieran Culkin energy really tries to carry this movie, but in my opinion, it gets kind of old. Jesse Eisenberg is pretty good in it. I like when the story slows down and kind of stews in moments. That's when it's at its best, I'd say. Plot doesn't fully click for me at times. You can kind of backtrack Eisenberg's thoughts as he's like writing a scene. And some of the directing choices, just knowing it's coming from Eisenberg, it just feels like a little weird whenever there's like a push in on a key emotional scene with Eisenberg, but it has like this weird like self-aware intentionality to it that took me out of the film. And the movie does have things to say. It just feels like there wasn't a huge effort to give the story any bite. Maybe that's the point, that you're just on this Polish vacation with some characters, but you can only have so many scenes in a movie of people falling asleep in a hotel and eating sandwiches on a train where I just get kind of bored and like I want to go eat a sandwich. The Fall Guy. Holy shit, is this movie too high? I mean, I liked it. I think it's good, but this high? I think the club action sequence probably just lifted this movie a full star for me, honestly. Oh, this list is fucked. I had a great experience watching Alien Romulus in theaters. I can say that I think the visuals were maybe the best of the year. And that includes Dune. Minus the deep fake Ian Holmes shit, obviously, I'm not including that. The story doesn't hold up over time, I'd say. The characters are pretty forgettable. I don't think it reaches the heights of Fede Alvarez's Evil Dead, but it's good. Blink Twice. Zoe Kravitz's debut film was potentially one of the best films I saw last summer, I'd say. Entertaining, enticing, a lot of missing plot and confusion that starts to slowly seep in for the audience in a good way. And I'd say, looking back, is this like Channing Tatum's best role? I loved him in this movie. As far as like a Jordan Peele-esque social commentary movie goes, I'd say it did a pretty good job. Here, look, this movie at bare minimum is interesting. And I'm not gonna lie, it did make me feel things. I guess for movies in 2024, I'm at a point where a movie like this can really stand out as something unique and special compared to like every other movie in this year. It's a bit cheesy, it's a bit scattered, and Eric Roth somehow doesn't know how to end a movie without something flying off above a city, but it actually worked for me here because we had been sitting in a locked off position for so long. It was nice to finally get like a release of like, holy shit, we're all living in this fucking endless fucking display of life here. Kim's Video. Really interesting documentary highlighting the rise and fall of a famous video store in New York. What begins as an earnest attempt at reclaiming some of the lost videos quickly escalates into a personal obsession for the filmmaker. It leads to some crazy places, let me tell you. Broken promises, political corruption. I judge documentaries off of like, what access to footage do you have and what is like the personal connection of the filmmaker to this subject? This documentary excels on all counts. It's unique, edgy, and a great snapshot of what a person's obsession with culture and movies can lead to. I saw the TV glow. Definitely one of the most unique theater experiences for me this year. It's really layered and interesting as you kind of dive in more on what the movie's trying to say. For me, the things that I took out of it the most were finding your identity at a young age through the media that you consume and this weird symbiotic relationship happening with you and the TV. And I really dug a lot of like what this movie was like saying about that stuff. Some things don't work and are a bit jagged in this movie. The ending can potentially make you question the point of watching the entire movie, I'd say. When I finished watching the movie in the theater, I was like, people are going to hate this movie. So you really got to be on board for some of the things it's saying and really try to tackle them yourselves after the fact. The visuals of the movie, though, are insane. The vibe is dreamy, and I dug it. The message is kind of dark and hopeful. A movie that wildly fluctuates from 1 to 5 stars as you watch it. Monkey Man. So much shaky cam. But overall, pretty solid directorial debut from Dev Patel, I'd say. The soundtrack, pretty awesome. The action, dynamic, feels stylized in a way that accentuates rather than distracts, and the setting provides so much interest. The film feels unique. It feels like there's something alive, and I want to see Dev Patel's next film. Well, I got through I Saw the TV glow, so I'd say that The Apprentice is the next hardest movie to talk about this year. The performances are phenomenal. If you're jonesing for some Jeremy Strong Succession energy, you will get your full fix here. The descent of the primary character is telegraphed and a bit obvious, I'd say, but it's also still effective. And as complicated as the movie is, there is really good imagery in this movie. Solid filmmaking. As far as like a biopic goes, I do think that this one stands out. One of the harder movies I've had to rate this year. Yorgos Lanthimos movies in general tend to be kind of like hard to chew on. I'd say. But this film, being an anthology, kind of makes it particularly difficult. Having the 3 stories gives the movie a lot of room for idea and story exploration, which I like. But it does kind of leave it feeling a little disconnected or unfulfilled theme-wise. I'm still down for a Lanthimos journey, though, so obviously I had a great time watching it. The final story in this film, I think, is phenomenal and the best of the 3, and the ending has absolutely stuck with me. We live in time. There's some really nice moments in this movie. There's also some really cheesy, hammy movie moments. The non-linear structure, I'd say, added to the experience and made moments feel more necessary, more impactful. I thought Florence Pugh was really great in it. I didn't love Andrew Garfield's performance. I thought it was okay. There are moments I really like, but I just never fully got there. The movie did make me get through, though. It made me cry. I'm not gonna lie. It's sad yet hopeful, tender yet cheesy, eggy too. Man, I think I'm hungry. Evil does not exist. Or does it? I was really into this movie. I appreciated the slowness. The meeting scene, incredible. Then the last 15 minutes happen and the movie kind of becomes something else. It's a bit at odds with itself, but the imbalance creates an interesting subtext around the film. It's a movie I really liked and I continue to wrestle with. And best score? Love Lies Bleeding, an enticing, high-octane thriller. One of the freshest films of the year, absolutely. I think it achieves a lot of what it sets out to do, but it does kind of fall into a couple tropes and story beats that drag it slightly off its pedestal. A rewatchable, for sure. A flawed movie, but one that I loved a lot. It's a trap. Call me a Shyamalan stan. But with his films, I find myself more engaged, more along for the ride, even if the ride is kind of bumpy. I greatly enjoyed the what if mentality of this film. How do I get out of a stadium if there's some shit that goes down? Those are the what ifs that happen in my brain, It's what's the exit points here? And Shyamalan just harnessed that thought into this weird, twisted serial killer story that's just fun for the whole family. This movie doesn't take itself too seriously and is all the better for it. This will greatly vary on people's scales, I'd say, for 2024, but for me, it's solidly in the upper half, easily. A movie that I've actually thought about a bit from time to time this year. I saw it pretty early on and may have given it kind of a somewhat soft rating because I might have anticipated some bigger and better things down the road. Very simple story about a simple man that is beautifully simplistic, yet reflective and deep if you allow it to be. It can feel very mundane, very linear, but so can everyday life, am I right? And I think this movie has a lot to say about the nature of putting your head down and getting into the rhythms of life and work. I do need to rewatch it, and when I do, I think I'll probably end up bumping it up in rating. But on one hand, it does kind of feel like Wenders visited Japan, loved the unique look and clean nature of the public bathrooms, and then just decided to make a film.
今度は今度。今は今。
今は今。
And now we have reached the 4-star barrier. For me, anything 4 stars and above in my rating system is something that I genuinely love and appreciate, and I think deserves your time. We're getting into the good shit, We're getting into that good shit. Starting with Problemista. Julio Torres' debut is witty, weird, wild, and wistful. The fun toy cutaways really make the movie, I'd say, in a way. The ideas that are just little bits that he has for the movie, super solid, and those are the things I kind of really come back to. But at the core, it's this loose, tender story about being an immigrant in New York with big ambitions. I really like how this movie ends, too. It gets really out there and does not give a shit about what a conventional movie would do for an ending. It's really bold and endearing, and it brought the rating up for me, maybe on what would be more of just a standard kind of rom-com coming of age type movie. I found it to be a little bit smarter than the average one. Highly recommend this, as well as every movie that comes after this as well. Twisters. Definitely, in my opinion, one of the more successful legacy sequels of our time. It really doesn't get bogged down in any character histories, although there is one character you can tell that they wrote that for the possibility of something like that, but they really just give you these new characters, new people to kind of latch onto, but same setting, same conflict, and it just gives you what you came for. Twisters. I mean, there's fucking twisters in the movie. A little bit of meaning here and there, a little bit of humanitarian messaging going on through it, which is nice. And it doesn't feel as forced as some other real world tie-ins for conflicts. And just when you're worried that they're going to take this movie into another 30-minute extra climax that you don't even fucking care about, the movie is over. And you walk out satisfied. It's great. I actually drove out of this one though, because I saw this movie at the drive-in in Middle America. So I may just be prime positioning on this one, honestly, guys. The Order. Pleasantly surprised with this film. I didn't really think I was going to get like the level of drama that I got with this film, and it was pretty compelling. Some of the action, pretty well choreographed, felt pretty visceral. I watching this movie, I was like, is this the closest that we've come to True Detective season 1? It doesn't like get to the heights, obviously, because I don't think anything ever will again. It's close. The setting, the characters, some of the conflicts involved. Most movies, I never say that I wanted them to be longer. This movie, I could have used like another 30 minutes. I'm not gonna lie.
Live from New York, it's Saturday night!
High energy, high reference count. It's good for you. Works for someone like me who has actually watched the first episode of Saturday Night Live, and will probably not work as well for someone who isn't versed in the 70s alternative comedy scene, which I can totally understand. While the movie is a fun ride for me, I can see how it would drag or kind of lack certain interest for some others. I may have overrated it, a bit high, but I saw it on Saturday night the way God intended, and I did have a great time. Kneecap. I had a great time watching Kneecap. This is the movie I'm talking about where this Irish energy, I don't want to hear this fucking dreary fucking small things like these. Banshees of Inisherin, aren't we all depressed and want to kill ourselves? No, Kneecap, motherfuckers. Perhaps the only movie I've seen to utilize Gaelic? I loved how selective they were on revealing the language, whether it was like through voiceover or lyrics. The stance the movie takes is powerful. There's a lot of conflicting characters and storylines in this film, so it does kind of feel like a little bit haphazard or cluttered at times, but I just love the overall energy of this film. A very unique film, one that warrants rewatch for me, I'd say as well. The Count of Monte Cristo. Great Gatsby, Barry Lyndon, Django Unchained. This is my first time consuming any Count of Monte Cristo story. Don't you just love this weird modern time where all of our entertainment connections are just formed ass backward? That's great. I enjoy forming those connections when I actually can link them, but it just makes you feel ignorant for not consuming the entertainment in the correct order. But, you know, I guess I'd rather experience it this way than like reading Count of Monte Cristo in 18 whatever the fuck, you know, and having no experience of watching Django Unchained. That would be really sad. So whatever, you know, I'm satisfied. I would say this movie also, best set design. Phenomenal. Yeah, I found this movie to be pretty interesting. It's experimental. It's telling you the story in chapters out of time. You feel like you have the movie figured out, and then it flips you, and then you're like, okay, now I know what the movie's about. And then it like flips you again. You're like, you motherfucker. It's good. It's ahead of you, I'd say, on the first watch. I do wonder if rewatch, this movie won't be as like high yield, because I could see some of the predictability ruining maybe the experience of the movie. But the first watch through, this was one of the more entertaining and unique movies of the year for me. Another reason that this movie's higher up on my list, I'd say, is because it has the Best Actress award for me, which is Willa Fitzgerald. She goes absolutely nuts in this movie. I love the execution of her character. I don't want to spoil too much, but I will say she is phenomenal. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. I'm not gonna lie, I was really skeptical about another Apes movie. I think the newer trilogy of Apes maybe are some of the best big budget remakes around. I thought that War was the weakest of the three, and I wasn't sure we needed another, but I was pleasantly surprised. I respect the time jump. I think that was a good decision. We have all new characters, a world pushed further towards what we see from the original films, but we still have the legacy of Caesar in the background. That's really important. The visual effects are still fantastic, and I think the heart's still there. I really like this universe. I like these movies. I'm down for more. I gotta say, I'm down. Hundreds of Beavers. Wait a minute. Did Saturday Night steal the poster from Hundreds of Beavers? Anyways, Hundreds of Beavers is an iconic cult comedy that only comes around every 15 to 20 years. It's a modern generation's Kung Pao Enter the Fist, but actually kind of good. It's a slapstick silent film video game movie, and it's really hard to explain. You might love it, you might hate it. It might get old after like 20 minutes, but the bits that rose above the rest in the climax of the movie really brought the love, brought the appreciation for me. It's one I'm going to definitely be rewatching, and one that I think you just toss on and enjoy. Did I expect the third A Quiet Place movie to be this high on the list? No. But here we are. It was one of the better franchise movies I saw this year. The gimmick of the first day, in my opinion, yields like entertaining results. I like the herd of creatures rampaging through the city at every noise. I think that's like a cool idea. And I like cats. I like the intimate friendship between the two main characters. It's really fleshed out and developed, again, for such a big franchise movie. It's tender, it's honest, and the performances are great. The journey for the main character is something that you have to be on board for. It's not really something you would anticipate coming into the movie. For me, it was very welcome after I settled into it. There are some actually like really artistic, meaningful shots in this movie too, which I was pretty surprised, I gotta say. My old ass. Man, I really like this movie. It's another movie that made me shed a tear. It's nice to know that a movie can make me feel something, you know? The premise is good. It provides a lot of fun for the film and a unique backbone for this coming of age story. Like, I love coming of age stories, and this one has like a generally good hook to it. I really loved the setting of this movie as well. I think being on the boat a lot of the time, it does provide a lot of that like visual interest. Good performances, goes for the heartstrings, but not in like a cheap way, you know? It's good shit. But I'm also just a sucker for these coming of age movies, and there'll be more to follow. Finally got around to watching this now that's on Hulu, and I loved it. An action movie set to the rhythm of old age. The pace and tone of this movie blends perfectly. A true breakout performance from June Squibb. She's got a bright future ahead. I also really loved basically every supporting performance. Richard Roundtree, Parker Posey, Clark Gregg, and a great kind of like ender scene with Malcolm McDowell. Thelma perfectly captures this older generation's struggles, but has this youthful vigor because it also explores a younger generation's struggles with Fred Heschinger's character. And I think this movie, honestly, it's quietly one of the best films of the year. It's What's Inside. One of the most surprising watches of the year for me, this one. You start off thinking you're in for kind of like another shitty Netflix movie, and it actually has a lot more going on than you'd think. It's a movie that's challenging you to track it, which for me provided a really engaging watching experience. It's a pretty good riff on like a body swap movie. The colors are a bit extreme, I'd say, at times. A bit kind of like over the top, but I liked a lot of the camera work in this movie. There's some creative stuff there. It's What's Inside. To me, it's a very super fresh 2024 movie. I really liked it. Heretic subverts a lot of your standard horror tropes, but kind of leans into them in like fun meta ways too. The overall argument of the film is something that easily captures my attention. A good watch for a lot of like people in our belief systems in our time. And that's what I think is special about this type of horror movie for me, is it feels relatable in ways. It feels like something I can latch onto, something I can actually feel existentially scared or interested in, rather than like standard horror shit. I usually don't like Hugh Grant, but he's great in this movie. I don't really want to spoil anything because I didn't even think I was going to watch this movie this year. It seemed like another cheap horror with nothing really new going on. Creepy dude kidnapping some innocent people. I didn't watch Speak No Evil for similar reasons, so let me know if I'm missing out on that one. But I was so surprised by my interest with Heretic. It is so worth a watch. And also, I got to give it the coolest shot award. It has this shot where it comes up a ladder and goes through like a game board, tilts down. We see that we're in the room with the girl we're fought. Great shot. Great shot. Look Back. Absolutely love the score. I'm going to give this one best score, I think. Look Back is a really tender movie about artistic passions, how they can align, what you can give to collaboration, what you take from others' collaboration. And it also shows like how art can exhibit each other's differences and how they can drive competition in a way. It's like healthy and unhealthy in this like symbiotic relationship. There's also a real tragedy reflected in this movie that I thought was really tastefully done. Displays how something like that can affect friends and loved ones involved. I loved it. Hitman. Steamy, fun. As far as 2020's rom-coms go, yeah, this one fucking nailed it. Linklater goes more broad, casts a wider net for audience, and in my opinion, makes another really successful movie. I like Linklater a lot. I think Glenn Powell's great in this movie. I think Adria Arjona is phenomenal in this movie. Hitman sizzles, it moves, it entertains. It also has the best utilization of a cell phone that I've seen in a movie in recent years. Most filmmakers are trying to avoid using cell phones at all costs, but this movie, it steps up and it tackles it exquisitely. Great movie. Like I said, I'm a sucker for coming of age movies. Snack Shack is firing on all cylinders. You could tell the filmmaker is like on their toes for this movie. It feels like this person is poised. They know the tropes, they know the characters, they know the feeling that they need to achieve, but the fun that the film needs is something that they really like lean into in a great way. It just has a really strong energy, you know? It's rough but gentle, kind of like the 90s, you know? I went back and forth so many times on which desert set epic was better this year. And as of now, I'm putting Furiosa here. It's more up my alley as far as like tone and storytelling goes, for sure. Like the fun that we see in Furiosa is something that I particularly gravitate towards. I prefer to lean into the genre, and so does George Miller. I thought Furiosa expanded the lore of Mad Max in a way that was welcome and interesting. I liked seeing how these factions and settlements kind of function together, witnessing all these badass, batshit insane players that operate between the camps. On rewatch, I may bump this one up, who knows? And then, of course, there's Dune Part 2, made by a filmmaker and actors who are just peaking at the moment. Denis, for some reason, everyone keeps telling me he's sterile. I'm not sure what that has to do with like the film Dune Part 2. I thought the movie itself was highly entertaining. Big budget, blockbuster filmmaking done right. Personally, I think most of Villeneuve's other films outrank both of his Dune films for me, but that's just a testament to how great his other films truly are. I feel like I've talked enough about Dune Part 2 this year. Everybody knows it. They've seen it, right? Yeah, we're good. Let's go. Come on. Whew. Whew. Anora. This is a movie that the more I think about it, the more I like it. I did give it 4 stars, and we're about to cross the threshold into 4.5. And I think I'll probably move it up pretty soon to 4.5. This movie hooks you pretty easily. I mean, you know what I'm saying? And then it like completely shifts gears on you like halfway through and just becomes one long extended sequence, excruciatingly like funny and agonizing to watch. I haven't seen any of Sean Baker's other films, so I do need to watch them. I would say that this is like a good swing at Uncut Gems from what I can tell. Kind of feels like his attempt at something like that. I'm giving Mikey Madison a nomination for Best Performance. Unfortunately, I've already given it to Willa Fitzgerald, but I think she's fantastic in the movie. And surprisingly, I am going to give Best Actor to Mark Eidelstein. I think he captures like this character very well, but also in his performance, a lot of the movie he's like really fucked up and like drunk to a level that is like hard to pull off, I'd say, as like far as like an actor goes. And he's like spot on for a majority of that movie. I'd say for Anora, the movie, the character work itself is kind of a little thin, but I love the ride. And for so much that I don't know about the characters, I can understand them fully. I think this is one of my favorite movies of the year. Looking back, I think it'll probably be one of the best movies of the year, even higher than what I have it right now, honestly. And I can be truthful about that. I just love the shot of them on Fremont Street in Vegas, man. Like the music is fantastic. That song, the vibes are so high. But if you stop and like think about what you're like witnessing on screen, there's this artificial like firework display above them and everything's fake. Everything is like a fantasy, you know? And this movie, great. The Remarkable Life of Argylle. So I guess you would say that this is the best documentary of the year for me then, because it is the top documentary on my ranking. A doc that made me extremely emotional. It reminds me of a documentary I watched a few years back called Gleason. Both films give you this really intimate personal look at somebody struggling with a disease. This documentary though, it's really unique as well because a lot of it in its format, it's told through World of Warcraft interactions that this person had in their life. While in real life, they can't do or be the person that they really want to be. In World of Warcraft, this person can be adventurous, chivalrous, complicated, honestly, and a true friend. I think it's fantastic. I highly recommend it. I would not watch this unless like you're ready to cry. Flow is something completely singular in the year 2024. There's no movie like this movie. This movie is animated, but there's no dialogue. I wouldn't really say it's for kids because it's ultimately hopeful, but actually really dark and harrowing. One person, Gins Zobolotis, was the producer, writer, director, animator, editor, composer, and cinematographer for this film. Watching this movie in theaters, it gave me hope for the future of cinema. Because if people are allowing passionate people to express themselves through their art, like I just witnessed with Flow, then like we're all good. The art of cinema is in good hands if we allow it to be. If I had one critique of the overall like story structure of the film, I'd say that the peril that you experience in the movie kind of gets replicated and it doesn't really escalate to places in story that you might want. The cat's in the boat, the cat's in the water, the cat's in the boat, the cat's in the water. The stakes are changing, obviously, but I'd say like overall by the end of it, you're just like, every time the cat's in the water, you're just like, why are you making me feel this?
What would you say? You look like Queen Victoria showed. You daft old...
Wicked Little Letters. Absolutely phenomenal fun. This is like a feel-good movie, but yet stern and commanding in a way. It's an interesting mix that in my opinion leads to like easy interest level, but also engagement for those who actually stick with the film. Great performances from both Jessie Buckley and Olivia Colman. The movie, it is somewhat predictable, I'd say, that you like might kind of know where it's heading. I'd say that's maybe the only thing that kind of holds it back for me, but I love what the movie is saying. I love the conflict and the journey of the two main characters, and I'd say maybe the best ending to any film in 2024. I love the final like frames and final like beats of this movie. I absolutely loved it. I think this movie is for a lot of people. Dee. So, I mean, this movie was like actually made for me. The first slice of life coming of age movie that pinpoints my exact age in that exact time. I can't believe like we're throwing back to like my generation. It's like an old time, but like here we are. So Dee is so honest. It's so truthful to that late 2000s feel. The character's journey is so intertwined with my experience that it was just like hard to not feel completely seen by this film. The movie itself like also too is like loose enough that it can have a lot of fun and not like really be bogged down in just like how dramatic it needs to be, but it does get harsh and dramatic enough to fully embody like the confusion and the trials of being at that age. And at the core of the film, there's this beautiful mother-son relationship that binds everything, and it really never gets lost throughout the movie. Ending these types of movies can be pretty challenging, I'd say. Like, where do you leave off in a coming-of-age story because you have a full life after? But this movie, it ends so sweetly, just so perfectly. An amazing image at the end. I loved it. Just an amazing movie. Civil War. I would say that this is one of the most powerful films I watched this year. One of the best theater experiences of the year as well for me. The sound in particular is shocking, but there is also great imagery and really impactful storytelling to back it up. The vagueness of the background story works for me. I know it like really put a lot of people off on like the importance. To me, it's about sitting in what the feeling of being in a modern civil war would be like, and what you're experiencing and what your emotional state would be like, the attitude of a modern civil war. And just generally, it's about like the shocking and ultimately desensitizing nature of war. It's a movie that feels completely of our time, obviously, but something that I think is kind of universal and just like the way it attempts to tell this story. I think this movie is really successful. I like Alex Garland's movies. I think Ex Machina is a 5-star for me. So like this one, it's up there, man. I think it's really smart. I think it's got something to say. Challengers. Okay. Story structure and character perfectly in sync. Dripping with eroticism that is tantalizing and straight up entertaining. Great performances, great conflict. The tennis shots are impeccable. There's not a reused shot. They're so dynamic. I did not expect this level of energy from a Luca Guadagnino movie, having never seen any of his films before, but this movie blew me away. I really considered giving this one immediately 5 stars coming out of the theater. So on rewatch, this might be a 5-star banger. Who knows, guys? And speaking of 5-star bangers, we have finally reached the top of the mountain. This is the cream of the crop. The best films of the year. They are 5 stars. Here we go. Inside Out 2. I know. Okay, I know. You just got the 5 stars and you're like, Inside Out 2? What the fuck, Matt? I've struggled with it too. I was like, is this a perfect movie or do I just really love Inside Out? But honestly, I can't really come to like any faults of the movie after watching this movie. I couldn't really give you any faults. I think this movie too, like it's a sequel and you're like, oh God, no, there's nothing they could do to improve this. But you watch it and you're like, oh man, maybe they actually like improved the dynamics of like the characters and whatever not. I think this movie may actually be smarter and more impactful than the first one. I think like it's a hard feat to cross to like make it possible for a sequel, but I think it's actually just as like well executed. And to me, I have both Inside Out movies at 5 stars because I think these movies are just so successful in the way that they can perfectly wrap subtextual, metaphysical meaning into character arcs within a story structure, within the brain of another character, going through an overall story arc. These movies are just operating on so many more levels than every other movie that you've ever watched. I just think these movies are so smart. They're so touching. I cried like 5 times watching the movie. You can call me simple, you can call me lame, but I don't care, man. Fuck you. How to Make Millions Before Grandma Dies. Probably the simplest film in my top 10, but its simplicity and universality are kind of what gives it its strength. Everyone will lose their grandma. This film digs into that feeling, so it made me think a lot about my grandparents and family and maybe really reflect on like tradition in a meaningful way. I found the conversations between the 2 leads in this film, who are generations apart, to be so honest and relatable in a way that is kind of like uncinematic, but I found to be like truly refreshing. I think if you watch this and you're like, this guy put this 5 stars, what the fuck? You'd be like, it's so simple. It's not really doing something outside of like what it needs to do, but it all came to a head towards the end where there's another tearjerker scene. I didn't think I'd get there, but the emotions bubbled up inside when the character's emotions bubbled up. And I was suppressed like with this character the whole time. And now I'm gonna have to like just try to like come to terms with this. And I just watched the movie. I loved it. It's a 5-star film for me. I think it's a really special film. The substance. You can just feel a master behind the wheel for this ride. I think this movie is perfect at honoring other films and filmmakers while still making just something completely unique to itself and to our time. It's just my kind of movie, man. The production design in this movie is excellent. The props are so real, so tangible. They're packaged perfectly. They lead you visually and they're so fucking cool to look at. The special effects are some of the best you've seen in 30, 40 years. I laughed so much at the amount of fun that Coralie Fargeau is having with the audience. The end of this movie had me laughing my ass off, dude. The way that it just like full releases literally on the audience was so perfect for me. The audacity is just horrific and beautiful. I love movies, and this movie loves movies. And we've done it. We finally reached the summit. The best movie of the year was never on my radar until a few months back. The Wild Robot. Why are like 3 of my top 10 movies animated this year? Am I a child? Like, how old am I? Do I just instinctively crave escapism? Like back to a more innocent time where messages were simple and stick to your little soul and create meaning that will project you into a more hopeful future? Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah. For some reason, honestly, though, the most transcendent experiences of the last year have been in animation. Inside Out, the most recent season of My Hero Academia, these are like hitting me on a level that live action things can't do. I found the tone of The Wild Robot to be impenetrable. It's just pure spectacle, emotion, and character. The only moments I waned in any hesitation were when we felt like we were entering a different movie. Certain characters and settings felt like a little too kiddie or easy after witnessing just true empathic humanity for like the first hour of the movie. I love the characters. I love the voice acting. I had a powerful feeling overcome me in the theater that I was watching a classic unfold before me. I'd never really had a feeling like that before. It's an eye-opening, mature movie for children, but an even more powerful film for adults and parents. My God, what a beautiful movie. And there you have it. Thank you for sticking around if you did stick around for this nonsense. In a few years, I'll probably look back. I'll probably move a bunch of these around. It's all fluid. Maybe, hey, you know what? Maybe in a few years, I'll understand Zack Snyder. Actually, you know what? Hope not.